Good morning. My name is Bill Rataj. I am the Director of Housing here at the Community Development Administration. And the purpose of this video is to explain how to apply for the Healthy Home Repair Program. So I will be walking through the application and explaining the different steps. And I'll be sharing my screen. But first of all, you have to get an application for the program. So if you already received an application, need some help filling this out, this video may be very helpful. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to pull up the application, and then we have a bunch of different forms that we'll go through and walk through how to fill those out. All right, so this is what our application looks like. You will notice when you get your application, you have a date that your application status ends. It's usually 30 days after the application is mailed to you. If for some reason you need an extension, you can call us and we can grant that. But let's just kind of walk through this and we'll discuss what needs to be filled in and why. So we do ask that you send us copies of the documents, which we'll talk about in a minute, and not the originals. We don't want your originals. We don't need to have original documents. We just need copies, and you will be responsible for making copies of those documents and sending them to us. So first and foremost, you have to meet the HUD income guidelines for the program. HUD is the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. They fund the program, they set the rules, and it's based on the family size, the area median income. So you can see for a household of one person, it's $56,250. For a household of four people, it's $80,350. So your gross annual income has to be below that amount, not your net income. And we'll talk about that more later. So you need to see if you qualify there first. And then once you've submitted all your documents and we've approved your application, we will transfer your case over to Mission St. Louis, who is our construction manager in the program, or the building division for an inspection, depending on your individual case. All right, so let's go to the next page. So this is section A of the application. It's kind of self-explanatory to fill out, but obviously the date that you're turning this in, your address, your zip code, your home phone number if you have one. We realize not a lot of people have landlines anymore, and that's fine if you don't have that. But if you have a cell number, please put that down. If you have a work phone number, that number as well, and an email address. So the more information or more chances we have to get a hold of you, if we need to contact you, the better. So as much of that as applicable, please fill it out. We also need to know how many bedrooms are in your property. That's something we have to report to HUD. So if you could list that on your application. And we need to know what type of home it is. Is it a single family home, or is it a two family, a three family, a four family, or a condo? If it is a condo that you're living in, we do need to see a copy of your condo association agreement. All right, next up is we need to know all the owners' names on the property who are listed as property owners. So that could be you and your spouse and maybe another relative, a sister, a brother, or parent owns the home with you. But we need all their names because they're going to have to sign all the documents, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So we do have to know the marital status of each owner, whether you're single, married, divorced, widowed, or separated. The reason for that is in the state of Missouri, there are requirements that anybody who has an interest in the property via a marriage also has to sign documents. So if you're married, your spouse will have to sign documents, or maybe you're separated but not divorced, that spouse would still have to sign your documents. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well, but that's something we have to comply with state of Missouri law. We also need to know if you're involved in a bankruptcy, and if so, if it's Chapter 7 or Chapter 13. That will not preclude you from participating in the program if you have either one of those, but there are some extra steps that we may have to take, in particular with the Chapter 13. So again, it does not make you ineligible, but we do have to know about it. Okay. So once you've filled out all the property owners, the next thing we need to know is we need a list of all the people who permanently live in the property. So that would include you, the applicant, your spouse, any children, as well as anybody else who lives in the property. So a lot of this information here is stuff that we have to report to HUD. So we need the name of each applicant or each occupant, the race, whether Hispanic or not. That's something we have to report to HUD. The date of birth, that's important. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We do need to know the social security number because we have to make sure that the applicant is really the homeowner and the applicant of the property. So we have to have that information to verify that. So you would indicate the relationship. So the homeowner would just fill that out. If there's more than one homeowner, you would fill, right, homeowner as well. Or if you have a son, daughter, grandchild, whatever, you would fill that out there. We do need to know if somebody's disabled, and then if they are, there may be some other programs in addition to the Healthy Home Repair Program that can provide assistance to you, and we can provide referrals for those. And we do need to know if somebody in the house is pregnant. We're not asking that question because we're nosy, but if somebody in the household is pregnant, then you would probably qualify for the city's lead remediation program, and you may be able to get all your windows replaced through that program and some other repairs. So it's to your advantage to tell us that. Also, on the date of birth, if you have any children under the age of 6 who live in the property, that may qualify you for the lead grant program as well. So that's another reason why we ask for the date of birth. And the final reason we ask for the date of birth, there are some other minor home repair programs that assist seniors with home repairs. So we can provide referrals to that program as well. Okay, so once you've filled that page out or that section out, there's another table. And here is where you are going to list all of the people who earn income in the property. Now, HUD requires us to look at any household member over the age of 18, besides yourself and including yourself, and look at their income. So we want you to list in this section the name of the person, what you think the income amount is on an annual basis, and if don't worry about that too much about doing the math and getting it precise. That's something we'll have to check. But if, for instance, you were getting a paycheck, and just to make the math simple, let's say you earn $1,000 a month, you could put $12,000 for your income amount there if that's your only source. But if you have multiple sources, let's say you have Social Security and you have a pension, you can list all those sources there. We also need to know how often you get that source. So let's say you are paid through a job. Are you paid once a week? Are you paid bi-monthly, meaning only twice a month? Are you paid monthly? Are you paid bi-weekly? We need to know that information. Same thing for other sources, such as a Social Security award letter. You're going to get an annual letter, but that would be monthly. But we need to know what that amount is. If we get a pension, that's generally monthly. Things like that, whatever that source is. And then we also need to know if somebody is a full-time student, because there's special exceptions for people who are full-time students that we do not count most of their income. It's only a limited amount. So we need to know that. If somebody is a full-time student, so let's say they are going to college at Harris Stowe or UMSL or St. Louis University or wherever, we would need to see a copy of their transcript to verify that they are a full-time student, and whatever income they have, like I said, most of it will not count, but we do need to know what their income is and if they're a full-time student. For purposes of college, a full-time student is somebody that's taking 12 credit hours or more in a semester. All right, now up here in this section, you can kind of see some of the things we have to include as far as income calculations. So your wages and salaries, and again, this is before taxes. So this is your net income. It's not your gross income after all deductions have been taken out of your paycheck or whatever funding sources. HUD requires the net income, not the gross. There are some exceptions though if you're self-employed where we don't necessarily need all that. We'll talk about that. I'm sorry, we don't necessarily look at the net income. It's a little bit more the gross income on the self-employment. So let me just back up a second and explain the difference between gross annual income and the net annual income. So the gross income that you have from whatever the source is your income before any payroll deductions or any taxes have been taken out or medical insurance, anything like that. So your gross check may be for, say, $2,500, but your net income may only be $1,700 after all those deductions are taken out. But HUD requires the income calculations are based on the gross income, not the net. Now, if you're self-employed, there is a little bit of a difference there where we don't necessarily calculate it based on the gross, but there are certain things that can be deducted in that case for self-employment that we wouldn't calculate. So we would ask you for a profit and loss statement. So, we may ask for a quarterly profit and loss statement or a 6-month profit and loss statement, but that's something we would need to kind of figure out what your self-employment income is. All right, workers' comp. So you're getting payments from that. Social Security, of course. A lot of our clients, that's their main source of income. Pensions, railroad retirement, veterans benefits, rental income property. So if you, say, live in a 2-family and you rent the other unit out, we need to know what that monthly income amount is that you're receiving for the rent on that property. And if you own any other properties besides the one that you're trying to get fixed up, we need that real income for any other properties that you own. Some folks get SSI or supplemental Social Security income. We need proof of that income. We also need proof of income for temporary assistance to needy families. That's that statement, what you get. Child support payments. So if you are getting child support, we need to know what that amount is. Excuse me. If you're not receiving child support, we still need to know what the amount is, but we will need you to provide documentation showing that you're not receiving it, because we can't count the child support as income if you're actually not receiving it. If you are getting some sort of interest income from stocks or a bank account, like you have a savings account that you earn income through interest, we would need to see what that interest amount is. So there's some any source of income that you have, basically. Now, some things that we don't count, we don't have to count. Food stamps is not considered income. If you have a one-time kind of payment, that's not income. So let's say you got a tax return of $3,000. That does not count as income. Or if you won some money through the lottery, let's say you won, $15,000 through the lottery in August, say, that does not count as income because that's a one-time thing. So this is regular recurring income that we have to count. Okay. So then once you fill that section out, the next section is we need to know if you have a mortgage payment. And you can just click yes or no. Or if you already paid off the home, you don't have a mortgage, you can click, not applicable. And then we need to know if you're current on your mortgage payment. Yes or no. Again, that won't necessarily make you ineligible for the program, but if you're not current, we have to make sure that you're not in danger of losing your home through foreclosure. And since we have limited funds in the program, we don't necessarily want to invest in a property that could be lost through foreclosure. So you need to be current on that mortgage payment. And if you're not for any reason and you can't get caught up soon, please contact us because there may be some agencies that might be able to assist you with getting caught up. Some folks are in a forbearance or loan restructuring plan. So maybe you did fall behind on your mortgage, you called your mortgage company, you worked something out where they agreed to reduce the payments until you can get back on your feet, so to speak. So if you are in a forbearance plan, we need to see a copy of that. Again, that doesn't necessarily make you ineligible for the program, but we just need to make sure that you are going to be able to maintain making the payments through that plan and not in danger of foreclosure. Okay, and again, list any of the addresses of the properties that you own. And if there aren't any other, you could just write none, but we need to have that information. What I pulled out here, we have two different types of applications. We have a priority repair application. And let me just scroll back up to the top. It says, priority repair application. So these are for homeowners who have an event in their home or a necessary repair that HUD has determined is considered a priority. So this would be a leaking roof, your furnace or your boiler doesn't work, it's cold outside, you need to have heat in your home, you have a broken water line, so you can't get any water into your home. You have an electrical hazard, so maybe you turn the light switch on and sparks shoot out of the outlet, or you don't have electricity in most of your house because it's hazardous and it's not working. You may have a broken sewer lateral, or it's backed up, or your waste stack is broken or cracked, and you have raw sewage leaking into your basement or your house. Those things are considered priority. Or you don't have a hot water heater that works. That's a priority as well. People need to have hot water for lots of reasons, so those are priorities. The other type of application we have, which I'm not necessarily going to show up on the screen because everything is the same, is what we call a comprehensive repair application, and that's for folks who are on the waiting list. So once you get an application from us, up here it'll say comprehensive repair application, and it's almost exactly the same as this one I'm showing you right now, except it does not have these check boxes. It just has a section for you to fill out what you need to have repaired. Okay, this is very important. This is federal law. It does require that you provide us with accurate and truthful information. And if you do not, it is actually a felony to make false statements or fraudulent statements to the United States government. So by signing this, you print your name, you would sign it and date it. You're telling us that you are providing us with true and accurate statements and information. Okay, now section C is actually the back of the application. And it also lists the requirements there and some documents that you need to fill out, and we will go over those. So first and foremost, you have to have owned and lived in your house for at least 2 years. So you cannot say, oh, I've lived here for 27 years, but it was grandma's house and you don't necessarily own it. Grandma passed away in 2003. It's still in her name. You do not own the property. You're not going to be eligible until the property is in your name. Now, we are a little bit flexible on the 2-year requirement, but again, it's important that you both live and own the property. It has to be both. It can't be one or the other, which you have to have a clear title to your property is important. And what that means is the example I used earlier, maybe it was your grandmother's house and maybe you've lived there your whole life and you grew up there, but it's still in your grandmother's name. It has to be in your name. You have to be the property owner. Another thing that's very important is that your address, your mailing address has to match the property that you are seeking to get repairs for. So for instance, let's say you used to live in Florissant, but you own this house in the city and you moved into the house, 4 years ago, but you never got the ownership address information changed. So the city's assessor believes you still live in Florissant. So you have to have the owner's address and the property mailing address both have to match. If it does not, it's going to pose a problem. One, in general, you're not going to be eligible, but if you made it through somehow and that wasn't flagged up front, when it's time to pay the contractor for the work that was done in your house, if the mailing address is different from the property address, the comptroller's office is not going to pay the contractor. And then the contractor will most likely put a lien on your property because he or she cannot get paid for the work that was done. So it's very important that that matches from the outset. Okay, you have to have property insurance on your home. This is important for the homeowner more so than the city and the contractors and any inspectors that are going to be in your house inspecting the work. But first and foremost, we want to make sure that you as a homeowner have insurance in the event that there is a catastrophic event like a fire or a tornado or a flood or a speeding car comes crashing down the street and crashes through your front room. You have to have property insurance so that you're protected, but also we want to make sure that any city employees through the building division that may be on the property, our contractors, the folks at Mission St. Louis, that you have property insurance. We'll talk about some resources if you don't have insurance in a little bit. We do want to see that you have paid your taxes on the property. It's important that the fact that the city is going to be putting taxpayer dollars through HUD into your program, that you will have paid your real estate taxes and are current on them. Now, if you are not, there are some resources that may be able to help you get caught up on those, and we could talk about that if you have any questions on that. But by and large, you have to have your real estate taxes paid. And again, we talked about the fact that you had to be current on your mortgage payment. And again, we do want to assist you. We will help you work through some of these things and the required documents. So now we're going to talk about these documents as well and why we need them and the purpose of that. So before we go there, I'm going to show you another document that we provide with the application that kind of gives you an idea if you don't know where to find these documents, and we'll refer to it again later. So where do you get your deed, if you need a divorce decree, your identity proof, all these kinds of things. So we provide a list of the types of documents you might need and some references as to where to get them. Okay, I'll go back to the application. I'll probably come back to this document here in a minute. We do need a copy of the warranty deed, a quitclaim deed, or an affidavit of heirs, etc., on your home. We do not need a deed of trust, and I'll explain the difference. So a deed of trust can be simply, I borrowed $10,000 from Commerce Bank for a home equity loan, and they put a deed of trust on my property to ensure that I pay them back. That does not constitute ownership. A warranty deed or a quitclaim deed are the most common sources of property ownership, so that prove that you own the property. So a lot of times if you had a mortgage, you're going to have a warranty deed, or if you bought the house from someone, you're going to have a warranty deed. If your brother and you inherited the house from your mother and she passed away and your brother moved to California, he may transfer the ownership to you through a quitclaim deed, and that shows that you are the owner. So we need proof of ownership. We have to make sure, again, that we are working on a home that is owned by you. Otherwise, we can be accused of, fraud or trespassing if we worked on a house that you didn't really. Okay. If you are legally divorced, we do need a copy of the divorce decree. The reason for that is we have to determine how the decree showed the property ownership. So, did the divorce decree leave the home to you and your ex spouse, or did you get the property in the divorce decree? Again, the reason for that is we have to make sure by state law that any real estate transaction, the documents have to be signed by both spouses. So that's important to know that information. So we have to have a copy of the divorce decree and all the pages so that we can read it in full. But the main thing we're looking at is who gets the property. Okay, so to tie into that, if you're married or separated, your spouse must sign all the documents, whether or not they live in the property. And one thing I should have mentioned on the household income is that maybe you are separated and your former spouse does not live in the property. We do not count their income. So we don't need that information, but they still are going to have to sign all the documents for the program. And again, it's all the other owners listed on your deed. So let's say your mother passed away and upon her death, the property was left to you and your 3 siblings. So they are going to have to sign the documents. And if any of them are married, their spouses also have to sign the documents. So it's very important that we know who all the owners are and if they are married or not, so that we can comply with the state of Missouri law. Okay, next up is we need proof of identity. So we need a copy of your driver's license or a state ID and a social security card. So we have to have a picture ID that's current. It can't be expired. And we have to have a social security card so we can match the name with the face and know that we are indeed dealing with the property owner. Next up is a list of documents that you have to submit to document your income. Remember, on the first page of the application, there's this income chart here, which is adjusted by family size. That's HUD's main determination for who is eligible for the program. I forgot to mention that these income amounts fluctuate every year. So they have not come out for 2024 yet. So we're still working on 2023 income guidelines, but they will come out later this year. They usually come out between April and June of each year, and they usually go up. Although one time I know about 20 years ago, they actually went down. But other than that, every year they've gone up. Sometimes just in small increments, sometimes pretty significantly. But those are the income guidelines that they're looking at. Okay, so why do we need some of these documents and why do we care? Well, we care because HUD requires us to look at these documents. When they audit our files, they're going to check that to make sure that we captured all the income sources, that we calculated the income correctly, and that the person did meet the income guidelines for the program. So it's important that not only do we know that you qualify for the program and you meet the income guidelines, but HUD is going to make sure that we calculated the income correctly. So maybe you are still eligible for the program, but let's say we didn't calculate your income correctly, they're going to issue a finding for us. So we have to have all these things to make sure that we're compliant with HUD on the program. So first up is your last year's federal income tax returns. So we're filming this video in March. Most people, myself included, haven't filed their taxes yet. So we wouldn't necessarily need your tax return because they're not due yet for 2023. So we would ask for your 2022 tax return and any W-2s that you had if you're working. Now, some folks aren't required to file taxes because of the income threshold. If it's below a certain amount, you're not required. You could write on the back of the application right here, not required to file taxes. So we just have to have that information. All right, whatever benefit letter that you have. So the Social Security letter, award letter, the temporary assistance needy family, Social Security supplemental income, your pension, whatever it may be. And it needs to be the letter for the current year. So you should have received your 2024 award letter. We can't work off of a 2023 letter or 2022 letter. It has to be the letter of the current year. So even though those amounts don't go up a whole lot typically, we have to have the current year. That's a HUD requirement. Okay, so how many paycheck stubs do we need for people who earn income through a job, and why? So it's a HUD requirement that we have to have 2 months of paycheck stubs for everybody in the household 18 years and older. So that means if you are paid monthly, we're only going to need the last 2 months. If you're paid bi-monthly, then let's say you get paid on the 1st and 15th of every month, then we're going to need 4 of those stubs for the last 2 months. If you are paid bi-weekly, that's every 2 weeks. So we're probably going to need 4 as well. But if there's a third pay period, you got 3 checks in a month, then we would need to see that 5th one as well. So it's important for us to make sure that we meet HUD requirements. We need 2 paycheck stubs. All right. Now, the last 3 months of checking and savings account bank statements. This concerns a lot of folks, and we understand why it does. So first and foremost, this again is a HUD requirement. So the reason HUD wants to see this information, they want to make sure that all sources of income are accounted for. So let's just say you send us in your copy of your Social Security award letter, and let's say you have 2 pensions. You send us the one pension letter, but the other one is so small because you only worked there for a short period of time, and let's say it's $78 a month or something like that. Well, it may have been an honest mistake that you just forgot to send that to us, but as we're looking at the bank statements, we see that there's a $78 deposit every month from the same place. That is considered income. So we have to have documentation of that in the file. So HUD, when they audit our files and when we're doing the income calculations, we are going to look at all the income sources coming in from the bank statements and through your paycheck stubs and award letters, whatever else you may have. So you have to provide us with all that information. If you don't have a savings account, not a lot of folks have savings accounts, and that's fine. Just right here on this section here, I don't have a savings account. But we do need this, if you have more than one checking account, rather, you need to have both checking accounts statements. And what I tell folks they can do for the privacy and the security is you can take a black permanent marker and you can, cover out your account number, your bank account number. So we don't need that information. We don't want that information. But again, we are required to have copies of your bank statements. Now, we do secure that information. It's not accessible to anybody in the office. The files are locked and things like that. So you don't have to worry about anybody, getting a hold of that information. But we also need to make sure that we can read your address and your name on the bank statement. So do not block out that section. Frankly, I will say that we've gotten checking statements or bank statements from people at a different address for the address that differs from the address that they're trying to get repaired. And that's generally an indication that they don't live in the property. and therefore they're not eligible for the program. So we also have to read the address that the bank statements are getting mailed to and the owner's name. Okay. All right. We need proof of any other sources of income that you may have. So whether that's rental income, so you live in a 2-family or 4-family, you live in one of the units, you're going to have the other 2 or 3 units, depending how many there are. We need to see what that income is. So if you're getting $500 a month for each of those units, we need to see like the receipt that shows that you're getting that income. Child support, we talked about that. If you're not getting it, we can't count it, but we need to see what you were mandated to get and if you're actually getting it. Alimony, if you're receiving alimony payments, we need to know that information, whatever source of income that you are getting. Okay, and then for child support, we do require that you have to submit a 12-month history from the Missouri Child Support Enforcement Section. Okay, we do need to see the last paid real estate tax receipt. I will say if for some reason you can't find it, that's something we can look up online. So just, say I can't find it or something like that if you want to write that on the section there. We do need proof of current homeowners insurance. We'll talk about that in a moment, like some resources if you don't have it. But it actually has to be the declaration page of the homeowners insurance policy and needs to show the effective coverage dates. So, don't send us one that expired last month. We need the most current one. Okay, if you have a mortgage statement, we need to see the most recent statement. Again, and we need to see all pages of that. We need to make sure that you're current on the mortgage. We also need to see a copy of your Ameren bill to make sure that you do have electricity in the house. So it is a requirement of the city that a house cannot legally be occupied without electricity. So we need to make sure that you do have an Ameren bill, and the bill needs to show your name and address. Again, along with this bill and your Spire and your MSD bill, all of those addresses should match the property address. So if your Ameren bill is being mailed out to some other address out in St. Louis County or over in Illinois, you're not going to be eligible for the program. So those have to match. If you have natural gas service through Spire or what was formerly Clean Gas, we need a copy of that bill. Now, if you don't have Spire, please write here electric only, right here in this section, or you can even do it up there. But we do need to know that you have gas service, and we'll talk about why that is in a moment. Your most recent MSD bill, that's the Metropolitan Sewer District. Even if you owe a balance to them, we don't necessarily require that you're current with them, but we do need to see a copy of your sewer bill as well. Now, if you're getting some sort of plumbing repair from us, so let's say a water line or a sewer lateral, we will ask for a copy of your water bill, which also is the refuse bill. And the reason for that is that when the work is done, let's say they installed a new water line, the city building division, when they do their inspection, they have to make sure you actually have running water. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to sign off on the permit and inspect the work to make sure that it was done properly, that there aren't any leaks or anything like that. It was done up to code. So you are going to have a copy of your water bill, and your water is going to have to be turned on. If it's not turned on, we're not going to be able to, and it may have been shut off because of there was a water main break and the water had to be shut off. So otherwise your basement would flood or whatever. That's one thing. But if it was shut off for non-payment, we're not going to be able to assist you until that water bill is paid, because we have to make sure that the city can inspect the work. Same thing if you get a new furnace and you have natural gas service or hot water heater, and that's through natural gas. Your gas service is actually going to have to be turned on so the inspector can make sure that those systems are operating properly. If you have all electric, and we're putting in a furnace or something like that, then again, we have to make sure you have electricity so they can be inspected. That's pretty much a list of documents. I want to come back to that in a second, but if you have any questions on the very back of your application, this is the back page of the application. The person that's been assigned to your case is listed right here, and their phone number is listed right there. So we have 3 different staff that process applications. Each one of their contact information will be on this back page. It is also on the front page as well, right here in this yellow section. So I would suggest that if you don't make a copy of the application for yourself, you might want to write down the name and contact person so you know if you have any questions, if you want to follow up with anything, you will know who to call. Okay, so that being said, I will tell you that a lot of folks skip over this section C, and they do not provide us with all the documents or any of the documents in some case. All that's going to do is delay your getting approved through the program. Now, not all of these are going to be applicable to you. For instance, not everybody is necessarily divorced. So we won't need a copy of a divorce decree if you're not, divorced. Not everybody's going to get the same sources of income. Not everybody, if you're retired and you don't work, we're not going to need your paycheck stubs. So, not everything's going to be applicable if you don't have a mortgage. We don't need a copy of your mortgage statement, for instance. So, but make sure you pay attention to that. What happens more often than not is that once we get the application, we have to send a homeowner a letter that says, hey, we got your application, but we're missing these 5 things. So we send that letter back, and then the homeowner sends back 2 things. So we have to send them a letter. We asked for 5, you sent 2, you're still missing these 3 things. So we just want to make sure that you get these things as quick as possible to us, because that'll delay your getting assistance. And frankly, this is the section that delays the process the most. If you don't know where to get some of these documents, let's go back to this form. So we do provide a copy of this in the application. You could keep this for yourself. If you don't have these documents, where can you find them? Your warranty deed. You can get it from the Recorder of Deeds office. Now, if you can't find it, that's where you can get it. Now, I can tell you that it'll cost you $15 to get a copy. So if you can find it, that's great. You don't have to worry about that. If you cannot find it, give your loan processor a call. We may be able to access, we can access the Recorder of Deeds database. We could pull up a lot of the deeds. We could potentially pull up your warranty deed, but we can't pull up deeds generally earlier in 1981. So, if you have a warranty deed from 1977, we're not going to be able to access it. We only have access back to 1981. So in that situation, unfortunately, if you can't find yours, you're going to have to go down to City Hall. Okay, a divorce decree, if you can't find your copy of it, maybe you moved 3 times and it's in a box somewhere up in the attic in our basement, but it's not easily accessible. You just don't remember where you put it. You can call this number at the circuit clerk's office. Okay, for your proof of identity, whether it's a driver's license or a state ID card for a non-driver, you can get those through the Department of Motor Vehicles. Your Social Security award, there's some local offices around, or you can call this number, it's 1-800 number, or you can request one online if you've misplaced your Social Security card. So again, that's very important that we have to have that. Okay, the last year's paid real estate tax receipt. If you forgot where you put that or you can't find it, again, we could generally verify that online through access to information we have here. And again, if you aren't able to pay your taxes, there may be some programs to help you with that, but not everybody qualifies for that. So the rule of thumb is to make sure your taxes are paid. Your last year's federal income tax return, and simply where you get those is from your tax preparer. So if for some reason you didn't maintain a copy, you can, get those through H&R Block or whoever prepared your taxes. If you did them yourself, like through TurboTax or some other program, generally you can access that and print off a copy of that. Okay, your current benefit letter, again, the Social Security Administrative Office. If for some reason you didn't get your 2024 letter, you could call that 1-800 number or look it up online. If you do get a pension, that's from whoever administers your pension. So, if it was a bricklayers union or, maybe from the post office, you're a retired postal worker, or you worked at a bank, whoever administers that pension, you can get it from them. These others are pretty self-explanatory. And the only other thing I wanted to kind of talk about was current homeowners insurance. So if you do not have insurance, you can call any local insurance agents. I suggest that if you are a driver, you might want to contact your company that you have your automobile insurance through, because you generally can get a discount on your auto insurance if you bundle your homeowners insurance with it. If you can't get insurance for some reason, there is what's called the Missouri Fair Plan, and it's kind of insurance at the last resort. And there's a 1-800 number or a local number here. You can call those numbers. And those the rest of these are self-explanatory. Now, quickly, I'm going to run through some other of the forms that we have and explain why we need them. So a household member form, it seems a little bit redundant, but from the application, but we just need to have this information filled out by anybody age 18 and over living in a home. It's very easy to follow and provide that information. Okay. This is a co-owner form for somebody who does not live in the property. Again, we are not going to count their income, but we need to know that they are an owner of the property because they are going to have to sign all the documents. So again, just filling this out and having a signature. That's pretty simple to do. Okay, this is for specifically a non-resident spouse. So sometimes married couples live in different homes. We still need them to fill out this information and complete this form. Okay, it's pretty simple. And again, it may not be applicable if that's not your situation. Okay, let me pull up this authorization form. So this is a form that the city councilor's office devised that you are agreeing to authorize and consent us to share information with other programs like this, from the city, Mission St. Louis, things like that, to qualify you for the program. So basically, some of your information has to be shared with other people in the process. So this is just an authorization form that you would sign, a consent form. And then finally, we do have some special funding for people who were affected by COVID. So we ask you to fill out this COVID-19 certification form. Again, if you weren't affected by COVID miraculously, it does not mean you can't get help through the program, but it's pretty simple to fill out this form. So I think that is all of the forms that we have. And I thank you very much for your time. And hopefully we will be able to help you very soon.